Full debate, Colorado Congressional District 4 GOP primary.
Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who currently represents Colorado's 3rd congressional district on the western slope, but has moved to Windsor to run in the 4th. Logan County Commissioner and former state lawmaker Jerry Sonnenberg.
Hello.
Conservative activist and former talk radio host Deborah Flora from Douglas County.
Hello.
State Representative Richard Holtorf from Akron.
Hello.
3-time congressional candidate and mortgage broker Peter Yu from Windsor.
Hello.
And former State House Minority Leader, State Representative Mike Lynch of Wellington.
Hello.
A note for folks.
Gotta say, in a phrenological sense, a phenomenal lineup here, you know? This is a very diverse holding. Everyone's competing for Boebert's seat. You know?
At home for all of our debates. We say your title in the introduction, but that's the last time you will hear it. We don't refer to candidates.
Dude, that tie clip. This is actually extremely cute, by the way. This is very cute. The little glasses tie clip. This is adorable. I love this. I am 100% on board. Absolutely.
Using either elected or educational titles, you as voters will determine who will hold the title representative.
So this is a Republican primary debate. We are going to focus largely on issues of importance to Republican primary voters and on where you differ from one another on those issues, as opposed to where you differ from Democrats. And this is a debate, so as you know, we welcome respectful disagreement.
Candidates have agreed to a few ground rules ahead of time. 1-minute answers, rebuttals, and continued discussion at our discretion. 1-minute closing statement.
It's not Boebert's seat. She moved to a different district. Oh, the new, right, yes, the one she wants to fight for, yes.
And a chance to ask each other questions, which...
Why does he have, through his buttonhole lapel thing? They both have it. It's because it's 9 News. Isn't that cute? Having a little lapel button, like, pin for the channel? I think that's... personally, I'm charmed. I'm delighted.
We have seen in previous debates might be the highlight of this one. Because of the number of candidates, we'll occasionally ask you to raise your hands for yes or no questions, and that will allow voters to clearly see where you stand on various issues. So let's get started with one of those. Former President Donald Trump is now a convicted felon. Convicted today on 34 felony counts for falsifying business records to influence the 2016 election by covering up a hush money payment made to a porn actress after an affair. Please raise your hand if you intend to vote for Donald Trump for president, even though he is now a convicted felon.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Everyone on stage is raising their hand.
Mr. Holtorf, you have said that Republicans will continue to lose in Colorado if you are hogtied to Donald Trump. You've said Colorado is not a Trump state, and that won't change. Saying those kinds of things these days can get a man labeled a rhino and run out of your party. So I'm curious. Are you saying that you would defy Donald Trump's wishes and vote against any of his priorities in Congress, or just not talk about him as much?
Well, thank you, Kyle, for the question. Let's talk about what just happened. Donald Trump being convicted in a lower court. That's certainly going to get appealed. I do support Donald Trump, but let's remember what happened in 2020. Donald Trump didn't win this state. So does that mean Donald Trump does not control the state and have supremacy over the state? I would say that there's more unaffiliated...
He's really nervous out the gate. That was a very direct and tough question, by the way. I have a feeling that I'm really going to like these interviewers. You can already tell he's nervous.
Voters in this state, and the unaffiliated truly outnumber the Republicans. So we need to understand the dynamic of this state. I'm a big supporter of Donald Trump, believe me. But Donald Trump is running for president, and we need to understand that Colorado has its own unique issues, and we need a representative, Kyle, that's going to represent Colorado and the eastern 21 counties in Colorado. Not somebody that's going to follow Donald Trump around and do everything that Donald Trump wants. And I think Donald Trump has great policy, and I plan on supporting those when I go to Congress.
Luigi Del Puerto from our partners at Colorado Politics has a question about electability for Ms. Boebert.
Hello.
Lauren Boebert. An internal poll released by a Democrats campaign shows him leading you by 14 percentage points in November. A large number of voters are undecided, according to this poll, but this is now the second survey showing McCorkle's lead well outside the margin of error. It suggests you are vulnerable in a heavily Republican district like CD4, just as you were vulnerable in CD3, your old district.
Yeah, it's not a great sign for Lauren Boebert that she apparently switched districts just because she knew she was going to lose in the previous one. Like, that's not really a great sign of confidence.
Which is also a heavily Republican district. Are you not risking your party's very slim hold on the majority? What do you say to people who argue that any one of your primary opponents here can ably represent conservative values in Congress, but not offer the risk of losing the seat to Democrats?
First of all, I'm not trusting any internal polls that are secretly released by a Democrat campaign. And I think the Democrat who released that internal poll needs to be focused on his own primary, which he is scheduled to lose to his opponent, Trish. We have a special election that is taking place in Colorado on June 25th, and she has a huge advantage being the Democrat nominee for that special election. I do believe that Greg Lopez will ultimately win that special election, and we all need to get out that vote. In Colorado's 3rd district, we did have a very close election. But we also had 50,000 Republicans not show up to vote. And maybe
this is 1.2 times speed.
It's because those Republicans were frustrated at other elected Republicans who have failing conservative records, who refuse to stand with President Trump, and they felt abandoned statewide and nationwide. But no matter what, this is the time for us to show up and get out the vote. I do not believe me being here is making this a vulnerable seat. This is a huge move for conservatives in Colorado.
So just to be clear, Ms. Boebert, you blame Republican voters for the fact that you nearly lost a safe seat and not your own conduct.
When 50,000 Republican voters do not show up and think that their vote does not matter, that does make an impact on elections. That's why we have get out the vote campaigns, and that is why we need to start collecting ballots and follow the rules that have been put in place by Democrats so we can start winning elections again. In the 3rd district, I campaigned hard, I governed well, I govern as I campaign. I have bipartisan work, and I have passed more legislation out of the House in this Congress than any other member in the Colorado delegation. I'm proud of the work that I've done serving my constituents in the 3rd district and serving the entire state of Colorado.
We're going to hear from a few of you on this issue of electability. Ms. Flora, you said this week that poll, which granted is a Democrats' internal poll, right? So you always take that with a grain of salt. But you said that poll, quote, shows that Lauren can't continue to run from her drama and divisive antics that nearly cost Republicans one safe seat already. You wrote,
you know, this was mentioned earlier, and I think it's well worth repeating. Because of Trump's hold on the GOP, there's basically no way to be a member of the GOP without being a vassal of Trump. It means that in every state, even states like Colorado, every candidate is now essentially being run as a proxy for Trump. There's no way to be like, oh, you know, we're going to have the moderate conservative win in this more blue state, because there's no way a radical Trump-supporting Republican would win here. That doesn't exist anymore, you know? You can no longer get, like, the moderate Republican front, because if you did, they'd be denounced by the GOP. You can only get the crazies.
Can't risk losing CD4 as well. We're talking about the safest Republican seat in Colorado's congressional delegation. Can you specifically outline for voters what you are talking about when you're referring to Ms. Boebert's drama and divisive antics? And do you really think it could lose a safe seat like this?
Thank you for the question, Kyle. I mean, the reality is CD4 has been redistricted. It is now a 73% suburban, 49% unaffiliated district. I have traveled all over the 21 counties and will work very hard to represent the rural areas as well. But with this change, and with CD3 being 65% rural, this is almost a mirror opposite. As I've traveled all over listening to voters, so many of the unaffiliated voters are Republicans who've left the party because they're tired of the purge and purify, the drama and the dysfunction. And many also are unaffiliated voters who do not understand, because no one has persuaded them that our policies are the very things that will solve the issues that keep them up at night. I do think it is vulnerable. I think the day of that will never happen in Colorado is long gone. And I think it's time that we have someone in this seat, which is one of the reasons why I'm running, where we can rebuild the party, where we can make it the big tent again. We can invite people to join us, and we can persuade our neighbors that we don't see them as the enemy. We see them as someone we want to represent and help solve the issues that are important to them.
Ms. Flora, thank you. I will note you chose not to describe what you're saying as drama and divisive antics, but you spoke to the composition of the district. Mr. Holtorf, you come from the other end geographically of the district, so to speak. But do you share Ms. Flora's view that the safest Republican seat in Colorado could be up for grabs if your party nominates Ms. Boebert?
So, Kyle, thank you for the question. Colorado's electorate has changed. We need to accept that. Colorado used to be a red state. Then it became a purple state. Some people claim that Colorado is now a blue state. If you look at the state house...
Some people, you know, contested feelings, you know, on the subject. Can you turn on CC, please? I don't know why. You guys, you've used closed captions for YouTube before. You know they don't work unless it's specifically captioned. Here, I'll turn it down to 1.1 instead of 1.2, okay?
That I served in, 46 to 19, that's pretty blue. if you look at the electorate, the elected officials in there. So yes, we have to be sensitive to the changes of Colorado. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to serve Colorado. We're here to serve CD4, whether they're unaffiliated, whether they're Republican. And if you're elected to CD4, you're here to also serve Democrats in the district. And I feel I'm ready to do that. So yes, you bring up a very good point. And we need people that can lead. We need people that understand that demographic. So thank you very much for pointing that out.
I want to give Ms. Boebert an opportunity to respond after I ask the rest of you for a show of hands on this question. Who here believes that if Republican primary voters nominate Ms. Boebert, that she could realistically lose in November? Mr. Lynch, Ms. Flora, and Mr. Yu say they believe that she could realistically lose.
In this undecided answer here, weakness.
Mr. Sonnenberg, Mr. Holtorf do not believe that she could realistically lose.
Let me clarify.
November.
I answered the question, so I didn't know.
Okay.
You wanted.
Do you believe that she could lose in November?
It's very possible. Yes.
Okay,
I'm going to raise my hand just to clarify. It's possible.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Boebert. An opportunity to respond to what they've said.
Yes. Well, it's interesting to hear Democrat talking points from my Republican opponents talking about this purge and purify process in the Republican Party. We just want people who are elected who actually represent our values. I have represented almost 30 rural counties in Colorado, and I am seeking to earn the support and votes from 20 more plus Douglas County. And having that on the ground work has shown so much unity in the Republican Party and bringing unaffiliated voters on our side. Having bipartisan legislation, having good governance in Washington, D.C., opening up the House floor for amendments to empower representatives to represent their constituents, and even working with our state's senators to get legislation across the line. I do not believe that I will make this seat vulnerable. This is a Republican district, and they want a Republican who has a 100% conservative voting record, as I do.
Thank you, Ms. Boebert. Many of you have identified
party affiliation among adults in Colorado. Yeah, it's party affiliation is a difficult thing to work out, I guess, in the polling data, in large part because there are people who will say that they have no lean, but that's because they're like a communist or whatever, a Nazi or whatever. I think that generally there's also like the energy levels, where you have the same issue in Washington and in Oregon, where it's the cities are very blue, right? And then you have these massive rural areas with one person per square mile, and they all have prep bunkers. It's all like this. That's the dynamic between the right and the left in the whole of the Midwest and the Northwest. It's you have like little core bits of blue in the cities and massive, incredibly sparsely populated red, and it's always just balances of that. You know, same in the UK. No. Let me clarify, okay? I know that city blue, rural red is the case everywhere. I'm talking about an extreme exacerbation of that dynamic. You know, it is ridiculous. It is crazy how big the divide is. Because I know that's the case everywhere, you know? It's like that in California, too.
Identified immigration and border policy as the main issue in this race. So we're going to spend some real time now exploring that issue and your views.
More than 150,000 unauthorized immigrants likely live in Colorado. Its population far larger than the biggest cities in the 4th Congressional District. It's about the population of Highlands Ranch and Parker combined, double the population of Loveland or Castle Rock. While there's been a recent surge in new arrivals, many of Colorado's unauthorized immigrants have deep roots in the community. In 2019, the Migration Policy Institute estimated that half have lived in the United States for 15 years or more. That mirrors federal statistics about unauthorized immigration from the Department of Homeland Security. Donald Trump is vowing to deport up to 17 million people using local police and the National Guard.
This is still never going to happen. This is never going to. This would be an economic wound that we would self-inflict. That would be like it would make the prohibition look like a minor policy error.
Possibly the U.S. military. Ms. Boebert, you're running an ad right now that says deport them all. That would be an enormous, unprecedented government action. So if you would please describe in detail how you see mass deportation playing out in the cities and towns of the 4th Congressional District, and include, if you would, who you think should be doing the rounding up, where folks would be detained before they're deported, and so forth.
First of all, having over 10 million illegal aliens coming into our country in under 4 years, this is unprecedented, and this is a massive lift.
Wait, 10 million in 4 years? Is that true? I thought we had 13 or 16 million living in our country in total. What do they mean coming into? Also, most of those are asylum seekers. Like, we're talking about people who are already here. How many undocumented immigrants are in USA? Yeah, it said, as of 2021, the nation's 10.5 million unauthorized immigrants represented about 3% of the total US population. I don't know where we're getting 10 million in the past 4 years or whatever she said.
From the federal government, when you have Joe Biden's administration flying illegal aliens from our border, from Central America into our interior, this is a problem. If they can fly them in, they can certainly fly them out. If buses can bring them in, buses can bring them out. We have got to secure the border, and Congress needs to use the power of the purse as leverage to get that finished and actually secure the southern border. We are impacted by this in Colorado with fentanyl overdoses, with having to defund our law.
Holy shit, I didn't realize their congressional districts were this bad. Wait, hold on. Lauren Boebert's currently running for the 4th district. Where was she previously? 3rd Okay, want to see the congressional district Lauren Boebert was in? The purple one. And now she's gone to the red one. She's moving from the district that's so sparsely populated that it's half the state to the one that's so sparsely populated that's a third of the state. That's what she's jumping to. Nobody lives here, man. There's Denver. You've got 3 congressional districts, 1, 6, and 8 right here that are like 1/20th the land of. This is who voted for Lauren Boebert. You know, in case anyone's ever wondered, like, from Colorado, really? This isn't Colorado. This is, let's be clear here, okay? If you live in the rural backwater of a state, you don't live in the state, you live in the rural backwater. The rural backwater is the same everywhere, okay? Culture comes from cities. I said it! I said it! Hang me for being correct. I'm correct. The culture of a state comes from its cities. The culture of a society comes from its cities. It always has. Always, forever, for all time. Ancient Egypt, whatever their capital was. It wasn't Cairo back then. Well, it couldn't have been. No. Their cities. It's always been like that. The rural backwater of everywhere is the same. Thebes? Would have been Thebes? Memphis, Egypt. Exactly.
Enforcement officers, our firefighters. These are important jobs where funding is being cut because of the illegal aliens and the invasion that is taking place. This is a humanitarian crisis. We need President Trump back in office to ultimately see this through. But I take this so seriously that I led the charge to impeach Joe Biden for his dereliction of duty at the southern border.
I'll note that you didn't make any attempt to answer the actual question, which is who should be doing this? It would be an unprecedented government action. Who should go into Windsor or to Parker?
If the federal government is flying them in and busing them in, they can bus them out. They can fly them out. And certainly we have agents that can help assist in that. But before anything else, we have got to secure the border and shut it down. I have talked.
When you say federal agents, do you mean just Border Patrol, just ICE, or are you talking about
National Guard, whatever it takes to keep our country safe?
How about local police, as Mr. Trump has said?
Anything to get our country back to some sort of normal is fine with me. And whatever President Trump puts out there, I certainly will talk with him and help enforce that.
Thank you very much. As you referenced, you introduced...
Disagree, Vosh. Cities end up being more homogenous because they participate in more mass media. A small Wisconsin town is vastly different from a small Floridian town. This is something I believe you could only believe if you haven't traveled. I've driven down the highways, man. Those little highway towns, the ones that like serve the rural area and the interstate drivers, those are all the same. All the same. It is true that mass media has but like it's not like they don't have TVs and radio in like smaller towns, right? That affect a lot of these places, you know, it's all Dollar General, Walmarts, and McDonald's. Rural culture is pretty rare. That's why you guys don't even make your own country music anymore. All country music these days is made by like multi-millionaire small business owner failed children talking about like working their Jeep advertisements into the lyrics of their song, you know, on commission. You watch TV and movies made by big cities, fashion, made in big cities for the benefit of people in cities, off trends in big cities. It's just, again, no hate to rural living, but, you know, if you want to be where the shit's happening, it's obviously in the cities, you know?
Articles of impeachment against the president for his handling of the border. That move was blocked by Republican House leadership. They sent it to committees and said,
the inquiry was sent to committee. It was not blocked.
It was blocked by sending it to committee, so you didn't get the full House vote that you wanted.
No, I did get a full House vote, and it was sent to committee.
I apologize. This is going to be a long evening if you speak
well,
over the text. Okay.
Right.
So, a question for everybody up here. Please raise your hand if, based on what you know now, you would vote to impeach President Biden over his handling of the southern border. Would you vote to impeach him for that? Everyone but Mr. Yu. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lynch, you've said that if our country is not going to enforce the immigration laws that are on the books, we need to take the quote-unquote bold step of changing them. You've called mass deportation a kind of extreme solution. What specific bold changes?
Kind of extreme. This is moderate politics in the GOP now. It's like, I think it might be a little over the top to use federal troops to infiltrate every community in this country and deport 10 million people. You know, I think that might be a little, going door to door checking for papers like the Gestapo. I think that might be a little over the top.
Would you make in immigration law?
Yeah, well, I thank you. And I appreciate listening to the words of people that have never really passed a law here on the stage, to include Ms. Boebert and
I have passed laws. Thank you.
And out of
you know what the funniest thing is going to be, by the way? You know what the funniest thing is going to be? When President Trump does the whole, like, we're going to deport every illegal bit, they actually commit to the bit. The number one resistance they get is all of the, like, agriculture barren ranch guys in the South who take advantage of undocumented labor. And then they get it. There's like shootouts, like ATF level shit between the prepper, like, sons and work hands, like, holding off federal agents. You would get like right-wing influencers being like, hey, listen, I'm all for getting rid of illegal immigrants who are destroying our country, but Hernando over here has been working on my family's farm for 8 years. You really don't think he's an American citizen after all the work he's been put in? And like literally, like, every illegal but my illegal. It's going to be phenomenal. Oh my God.
No, and it's been signed into law. Thank you. My Pueblo Jobs Act has been signed into law.
That we would just blanketly go after. We have a number of migrants that come into our state every year to work in our fields. So if we just blindly start rounding people up and sending them across the border, we run the risk of seriously impacting our ag community in the state. So the idea that we have folks that have never really done legislation trying to promote these sort of policies is very dangerous. These are issues that require smart, in-depth discussions before we go and start doing something as silly as, hey, let's just put buses and put them on them and get them out of here.
Okay, so you've told me what's silly. What is bold change that you would make?
Yeah, well, you know, what we need to do is look at our visa policies in the way that we allow people to stay here. I mean, here's the deal. I'm a small business owner. I would love to hire some of these folks. If we didn't legislate in the state of Colorado that I can't afford to hire them. So it's
literally what I
just
just said. I called it.
And go with the talking
literally
point
the
of
exact
let's just
same.
throw them out of the country. We need to legislate. That's what we're asking for right here.
Thank you,
Mr. Lynch. How many of these 10+ million illegal aliens have visas? We are not talking about visa holders here. And I understand that you are promoting this indentured servitude and do not want people to come here and live the American dream. I've been to naturalization ceremonies, and coming here the right way is the most precious thing that our country offers. It is so generous that we allow 1 million immigrants to come into our country, and they take that very seriously.
This is what I've said, how in America, even though we are a very racist country, a lot of the racism is framed through, like, civil infrastructure. Like, it's like civic nationalism rather than ethnic nationalism, even though in practice it's often ethnic nationalism, right? Because the language is still, well, no, the, you know, melting pot American dream, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty rare for Republican officials, even in this day and age, to go like, no, we don't want any immigration. There are some who do that, but for the most part, they still eulogize legal immigration.
And for you to stand here and just say that you need workers, I think that is gross, and it is nowhere near on point. You're talking about visas, and that system is broken and needs some repair. But these 10 million illegals do not have them.
Congresswoman Boebert, I would love to see, Congresswoman, your legislation that you've done to do this. What is it? Because you have passed nothing.
We are in divided government, and I have passed legislation out of the House of Representatives.
he's giving a more capitalist take while she gives a more nationalistic take. Yes, this is the same thing. This is classic like MAGA stuff. This is the stuff that Trump did, where Trump would posture as a kind of populist by arguing against the bottom line capitalist NAFTA stuff of like, you know, we shouldn't have sent our jobs out of country or whatever. Now, of course, this is very much like a 99% Hitler versus 100% Hitler thing. Lauren Boebert here is objectively incorrect with regards to the economic issue. I have no love of this country in like a procedural, you need to follow the law, immigration bullshit kind of sense. So like, I don't care, you know? We should pay our undocumented workers far more than we do, which is why we should get them citizenship.
Representatives. I work in the House of Representatives, not in the Senate, and I'm not in the executive branch. But I have passed legislation to secure our border.
No legislation.
Yes, I have. And to defund sanctuary cities. I have passed over 70 amendments to the House floor, a process that I fought to make available in the House of Representatives, something that hasn't happened in over a decade.
Because we don't want to have
a thank you very much. Mr.
boxing match here.
Mr. Holtorf, there's a question coming for you. Hold on a second. We were talking about jobs, right? You know, workers, right? But workers hold jobs, right? Jobs mean a lot to people, whether you were in this country.
I'm following. This rule is doing. I wish every debate, every like primary debate was this interesting. Man, the guys over here at 9 News in Colorado are doing a kick-ass job, I have to say.
Legally or not, right? And also, jobs matter to the overall economy. A question on this from Mr. Sonnenberg. You have also called for mass deportations, and let's talk about that economic impact. So economists have said that Trump's plan would deport about 4.5% of the American workforce, and that would likely cause a recession and inflation as that many workers vanish out of the economy. A CU Denver economist says that those jobs support jobs that are held by Americans. So some number of Americans would lose their jobs if you were to deport 4.5% of the American workforce, and that would be happening at a time when unemployment is near a 50-year low. Do you believe that mass deportation outweighs those economic risks?
Thank you for the question, Kyle. And quite honestly, when it comes right down to it, mass deportation that I'm talking about is shipping the ones that have been bussed into Denver, bust them back out and getting them back out. And to answer the question earlier, absolutely. I would use the police. I would use the National Guard. Those people aren't the ones working. Those people are the ones causing the crime to go up in Denver and the area around. Imagine, if you will.
Do you have any evidence to support that? Because law enforcement has not put that forward. I'm just curious where you're getting that causation.
Just, sir, if you could kindly post the source, please.
I'm looking at the correlation between the crime rate going up and the immigrants coming in at the same time. Just looking at those two rising at the same time. So I would attribute that. But ask yourself this question. If indeed you're dropped off in a foreign country where you don't know anybody, don't have any avenue for sustainability, don't have a job, what do you rely on to feed and take care of your family? They don't have an option. This is a humanitarian issue, and they need to go back home where they can actually do the work they need to support their family.
Mr. Sonnenberg, thank you. Ms. Flora.
Wait, what? How does that even make sense? What? They come here, the only jobs they'll find are crime, so we need to send them home. What? Do you think they come over here to America specifically to not find a job? It's incoherent. I don't know. Source?
And proudly note that you're from a military family. Your dad was an Air Force lieutenant colonel. You're the wife of an 82nd Airborne veteran. Let's talk about this idea of using the military, right? We've heard two people kind of talk about this already. Donald Trump is talking about it. How would that work if the National Guard or the military were to come into Douglas County where you live and start rounding people up?
Thank you. You know, I've been down to the border. I did an extensive period going from El Paso, Texas to Deming, New Mexico, Columbus, New Mexico, listening firsthand to Border Patrol, ICE, and DEA. And one of the things that I saw, there was a beautiful partnership between the Texas National Guard. I sat in the backyard of a woman named Dolores. Her back fence is the border wall. She called it her freedom fence. And when the Texas National Guard was walking along, she goes, "Those are my heroes." She even said, "I throw cookies to them every day," so she might have quite an arm. But the reality is that's the partnership I'm talking about. It is time that we understand that drug cartels are actually pretty much a narco-terrorist military organization. The reality is they control our border. They control a vast majority of Mexico. That's my focus when it comes to the use of military. It's already working very well with the Texas National Guard. It's time that we allow our great men and women to focus on our #1 national security issue, which is our southern border. And then we can address the humanitarian aspect of it, which is a disaster here as well.
Just want to clarify. That's happening in Texas because a Republican governor has mobilized the Guard in that way. Democratic governor in Colorado is not going to do that. So the options would be send in the U.S. military.
No, she didn't answer the question
or
remotely.
Have a future President Trump nationalize the Guard under the Insurrection Act and say, you know, bring in guardsmen from out of state into Douglas County. You think that would work?
I think that it is time that we take it very seriously for what it is.
Would you like to answer the question?
I will, because I do
have somebody that's
Mr. Holtorf, you've been interrupting people constantly. I would ask you to stop. Ms. Flora, could you please answer the question?
Yes.
Bringing in out-of-state National Guardsmen or the U.S. military in Douglas County, do you feel like that would work?
Not into Douglas County. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mentioned is to secure our border. That is what is required. And we also, by the way, have to stop the President of the United States from suing border states who are doing their own work.
The question was about the actual work of rounding people up in Douglas County. We took a couple tries at that.
There is deportation happening in Colorado. Mayor Johnston is doing it because he says he can't afford the illegals that they've invited in.
He's not deporting anybody. He's certainly offering people onward
telling
bus
people we will secure a bus and
for the
get you
folks
out.
here, there's actually two military members here.
Mr. Holtorf, your question on immigration is coming from our partner Luigi Del Puerto from Colorado Politics.
That would be great. I'm ready to answer the immigration question, but we have a captain.
At the Colorado State Capitol, you worked on immigration issues. You introduced a measure to repeal the state's so-called sanctuary laws. Say you were in Congress at the time that a bipartisan group of lawmakers pushed for a comprehensive approach to America's illegal immigration problem. That proposal, among its many provisions, would have given the Department of Homeland Security emergency authority to shut down the border if the encounters reached a certain threshold. Yes or no? Would you have voted for it? Please explain your answer.
So I'm going to start with explaining the answer, and then we'll talk about the yes and no. But first of all, there's two people that served in the military. There's one person that served in the National Guard. There's one person that's a retired colonel that actually knows strategic studies and understands how the National Guard and the active duty works and how they can work together under posse comitatus laws. So let's talk about immigration. First of all, nobody here may know, and I know, Kyle, you don't know, Marshall, you don't know, that my father was an immigrant. Okay. My father came from Spain. I was born in Spain. Yo hablo español. Mi idioma de nacimiento era español. Yo puedo conectar con la gente que están inmigrantes. You guys don't know this, but I do. Okay?
Yeah, go back to Mexico, dude. What are you doing? Están inmigrantes? I mean, I don't speak Spanish. This is my favorite part about politics. I don't know. Like, I just don't think that like an immigrant from Spain is characteristic of an immigrant from Mexico in the current day. You know, it's just not. Dude, immigration requirements in the United States literally used to be like you sail over here and then they give you a name. Like that. Literally. You had a guy, people would come on in a boat and go on Ellis Island and they were like, yeah, your name's John. Get the fuck out of here. And they would toss you into the streets of Manhattan and you'd wander around looking for a job, you know?
First of all, let's talk about immigration.
Yeah, that's why Trump is called Trump and not Drump for whatever. Couldn't spell their names. We had the most illiterate Americans managing immigrants over on Ellis Island. So anytime anyone with like a Polish surname came by, they'd be like, okay, all right. God only knows what my name was spelled like before they got to it.
It's very complex. And there's a lot of people here that want to be in this country, that want to become U.S. citizens, and many of them should have the right just like my father. Okay? Now, with respect to the bill I ran, the bill was to repeal the 2013 laws in Colorado that said you cannot allow local or state government to work with ICE. Do you think that the local and state government should work with the federal law enforcement when we have such mass immigration and there's criminal elements in this country? I say yes, and that's why I ran the bill in the state. Unfortunately, it was not passed. Okay, now, but this is very complicated.
Mr. Holtorf, you gave 30 seconds of a biography, and that was your choice. Thank you for your answer. Mr.
Dude, who powered this guy the f up before this guy came in here with the mission? Okay, you can tell this moderator hates all of these people, which is what a moderator should be. A moderator should despise the people who are debating. That is what is correct. That is what is morally right. That is how this guy feels. I'm very happy. Hell yes. Look at him. He's like, what? You can't correctly identify my aversion to the question.
But at least you know a little more about me, Marshall. Thank you,
Mr. Holtorf. Mr. You're the son of immigrants. You've said came to America legally. I'd like to ask you about people brought to the U.S. without authorization by their parents. You've said providing temporary legal status for those children, DACA, is a draw for more illegal immigration. The program is currently frozen by a court. Should DACA recipients, so-called dreamers, keep their temporary status and stay? Should they be put on a pathway to citizenship, or should they lose their status and be deported?
So when it comes to basically DACA and our dreamers, I do believe that there should be a pathway to citizenship. But for those who have basically been here for X amount of years, for those who have basically come recently, I do not agree, because some of them don't even have a court date until 2031, which would be 7-8 years down the road. So for those who have been in our country in the past, who brought here, this is the only country they know, I am open to that idea. But also open to the idea that they are actually law-abiding citizens, that they are contributing to society, and that they are respectable parts of our community. As a son of a family that immigrated here, the only one in my family born here, we know how blessed we are to be here. We are lucky to be here, considering the fact that there's a chance we could have been in some undeveloped country making $2 a day. But we came to this country legally. We basically have 7 children who all became extremely successful, and I'm proud of that. But I'm also making sure that we also have laws, because until we actually secure this border, which I won't extend about a fortunate amount of time, I would love to be able to explain exactly what we should do in regards to our border and making sure that we don't have this full influx.
Well, that was good for the minute. We're going to move on and get back to other questions.
Let's talk about the price of groceries, price of food for Americans right now.
I don't think a lot of people understand just how disruptive it would be to do this mass deportation. We are literally talking like the selective ICE raids where they would like go into Chinatown or into agricultural facilities and break it up. Like that's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of the total number of undocumented immigrants here. We're talking like Gestapo shit. We're talking like door to door. It would be like not only would it end the economy, but just logistically transporting, housing, jailing, moving that many people, it would be so expensive and so disruptive to life. We would be living in a police state for years, and we wouldn't even succeed in getting a lot of them because people would hide them under cupboards, or under floorboards. I'm not joking. Like this is their life. They've been in America their whole lives, or a lot of it, at least a huge chunk of it. You know, and people are going to hide them. There's going to be like trials of people hiding people who are undocumented, and they're going to be like, it'd be really bad, man. It'd be really bad. Oh yeah, you'd be getting like hotline tips and U.S. citizens being accused of being undocumented. You would have like Mexican 13-year-olds who were born in America whose parents legally immigrated 40 years ago, getting like ICE visits nonstop. It would be insane. It would be insane. It'd be impossible. It would be to effectively enact any culling of the population on that scale. You would be doing Nazi Germany shit.
Now, so food prices have gone up under the last 6 presidents, but President Biden has seen the largest jump in food prices, about 20%, based on what you're measuring. So there's a good question about what the Biden administration is doing about it, but there's also a question about what Republicans can do about it. Ms. Boebert, this session of Congress is on track to be one of the least productive in history in terms of the bills passed. Your Republican House colleague Andy Biggs said, "We have nothing to go out there and campaign on." Another House Republican, Chip Roy, said the Republican majority does not have one material, meaningful, significant accomplishment. And that's what the Republicans are saying. What has the Republican majority in the House done about the price of groceries?
Kyle, we have certainly
now we get the consequence of being purely obstructionist with no actual vision of governing the country yourself, which is that you've got literally nothing. Biden has been like a productivity demon compared to the Republicans.
Tried, and Congressman Andy Biggs and Congressman Chip Roy, these are my colleagues that I serve alongside of in the House Freedom Caucus, and I share their frustration. On every battle, we have been in closed-door meetings with the Speaker, whoever that may be, Kevin McCarthy, Mike Johnson, and trying to use, as I said earlier, our power of the purse, that leverage, to actually accomplish something and force the Senate to take our legislation and send it to the White House.
What is that legislation on food and grocery prices?
Energy is a great piece of legislation. Our H.R. 1 bill is our energy policy. I have 2 pieces of legislation that were included in H.R. 1 that would unleash our American energy production.
What?
And that is exactly what we need to do to begin
and how does
to
that impact food prices?
So hey, how are you going to lower food prices? Did you know we're going to we're going to put a bill for more fracking permits?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify.
When we are selling our resources and not regulating our communities into poverty and not relying on our foreign adversaries for our energy production, then we are unleashing our nation's full potential for economic development and prosperity, and it would lower inflation. So this is one huge step that we could do, but also take care of the reckless spending in Washington, D.C.
Gas prices are honestly not even that high. Like, they're high compared to what you remember back in high school, but relative to the inflation that we've experienced over the past 3 years, gas prices haven't increased to, like, a can of beans is like twice what it was 5 years ago. Gas right now is not what it was 5 years ago, you know? The gas prices have been fine and roughly stable over here in America, at least, you know?
Thank you very much.
My favorite part of the debate's asking each other questions here. We're going to start this off with Mr. Sonnenberg. You get to ask one of your colleagues here a question.
You know, that opportunity arose at the last or at the very first debate, and I chose not to do a gotcha question to any of the other candidates. I'd rather talk about my issues, so I'm going to decline to send a question to any of my other opponents.
Understandable. Again, I know at that debate you were told it doesn't have to be quote-unquote gotcha, but I will accept the time back. Miss Flora, you may ask a question of someone else.
Jerry, you and I have always taken the higher ground. I only want to ask questions that deal with policy. So I do have a question. As we've talked about, Denver is being overwhelmed by tens of thousands of illegal immigrants. They're lured here by the promise of food, housing, cell phones, and even driver's license. You've been one of the few Republicans that has actually voted for driver's license for non-citizens. What is your thought about the responsibility that may play into incentivizing those desperate people to be coming to these cities?
That's a great question, Deb, and thank you for asking, because quite honestly, the motive behind voting for that bill and supporting that bill was so we know where they're at. We know who's here, why they're here, and where they're located. We also, if you have a driver's license, then you're required to have insurance to drive, and that was important as well. But the main reason was specifically to make sure we know where those illegal immigrants are.
He just ruined the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Sonnenberg. Mr. Holtorf, you get a question to another candidate.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, and I will take this time to ask a question. In my 5 years in the State House, I passed 38 bills signed by the governor in a majority Democrat House and General Assembly. I know what it means for a bill to be passed and signed by governor or president. So for Ms. Boebert, how many bills did you prime sponsor? I said 38, I prime sponsored, not co-sponsor, because you can co-sponsor post facto. Anybody can put their name on a bill after it passes. How many bills did you prime sponsor in the U.S. Congress that actually were signed by the President of the United States?
So thank you so much, Richard. You know, it's interesting that you're touting the legislation that you have passed. You also say that you are a no-nonsense conservative. Well, I think the voters back home should know that a no-nonsense conservative should not have a failing Liberty score. We have the Independent Institute who scores representatives for their legislative record. And if you are not voting how you campaign, well, then you get a negative impact. And I'm the only person.
Would you like to answer the question, or would you like to talk about Liberty scores? You can answer the question, ma'am. It's okay.
Will. So,
I asked a very specific question. Please answer.
One of my favorite pieces of legislation that has been signed into law is my Pueblo Jobs Act that creates at least 1,000 jobs in Pueblo, Colorado. We worked to incorporate the BRAC process. So nearly $7 billion in infrastructure would not be bulldozed and go to.
This guy's such a hater for Boebert. He hates her. It's awesome. This is the energy we need to bring to the presidential debates. Okay, just get somebody who's absolutely contemptuous.
But there are also many other pieces of legislation that I've passed through the House, and
it doesn't matter if it's passed through the House. If the president doesn't sign it, ma'am,
government, and I'm not going to compromise my principles to just pass a bill that does not honor.
I would give you one more opportunity if you would like to answer his question, which is the number of bills you've prime sponsored that have been signed by the president.
So my Pueblo Jobs Act has been signed into law.
A number, please.
That is one.
Got it. Ms. Flora, you've called on all parents to pull their children out of public elementary and middle schools. And last week, the Colorado Republican Party told parents to pull their children out of all public schools. If parents were to take your advice seriously and pull...
Okay, in fairness, getting one out there with Congress in the state that it's in, you know what? Sure, man. How many bills have you guys put forward, huh?
Kids out of public schools. What would America without a public education system look like?
You know, the situation, Kyle, is I'm very proud of the work that I've been doing on school choice. That means other choices than just government-controlled schools. And I have to say, it's one of the things I've been fighting for, parental rights, school choice, which benefits many. And it's a very personal situation for me. Our daughter was diagnosed with autism, and she began to struggle going from a straight A student to almost flunking out. If we had not had the opportunity for something other than a government-run school, I don't know where she would be today. My goal and my statement for that was it is the right of every single parent, and I will stand for the right of every single parent to have that same choice for other opportunities. And by the way, many of the failing public schools, the people who are most trapped in it are underprivileged children who are trapped by their zip code. I've worked with many organizations that have begun to work on school choice because no child should be without the opportunity to flourish and the right of their parents to choose the best education for them. So that's the work that I've done, and that was the vein of that comment.
Okay. I was hopeful for an answer about what would happen if folks followed your advice and pulled all the kids out of public schools.
This guy's answer to every response that he gets from one of these dipshits. He's like, okay, well, that wasn't the question, and you just waffled, basically, but all right, whatever. I don't know if watching is a cure for autism. Yeah. This is I'm telling you, man, moms, or what is it called? Not moms for something. The autism speaks, like, you know, soccer mom demographic is the vanguard of American fascism.
But we'll leave that for another conversation. Mr.
Moms
Lynch,
against autism.
You resigned your position as House Minority Leader after your drunk driving arrest surfaced this year. And my question is not about what you did while drunk, which for anybody who missed it was speeding up I-25 at 90 miles per hour so fast a trooper thought that you were trying to race him. Then you...
Okay. I'm letting this stand as maybe the best example that I have ever seen. This is why liberal civility politics is bullshit, okay? Complete bullshit. If they deserve contempt, they should be treated with contempt. Anybody who disagrees, okay? There is nothing you could do with any kind of like high-minded, you know, we take the high road bullshit. Nothing comes close. Nothing comes close.
You reached for your gun during the traffic stop. You asked the trooper to call the State Patrol's lobbyist. Then you asked him to keep the arrest out of the media. My question to you is about what you did while sober. You did not disclose your drunk driving arrest to your Republican colleagues when they were considering you for leader and electing you.
How do they not break out laughing?
About your judgment?
How do they not break? If I see, this is discipline. They are simply on another level. They have a sauce that I do not possess. If I had been reading all that out loud afterwards, when I turned to look at him, I would have the most contemptuous smile on my face imaginable. The fact that he's deadpanning it betrays a level of discipline rivaled by like the greatest, like of the Tibetan monks of history. Okay, like this mother out there on an 80-day fast. Okay, he's meditating on a bed of spikes. He is beyond me.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for that. I mean, I think this is a little bit of you guys being a little sore because you didn't catch this for, you know, quite some time. This was all public knowledge, right? So I didn't disclose, I didn't hide anything from
the one bill she authored that made it into law created temporary jobs for the closure and demolition of a chemicals depot. The whole thing is 2 pages long, and the last section outlines why it should be closed rather than be repurposed as a homeless shelter. That's good to know. The one bill, and that's how long it is, dude. Shut down local jobs. And also, homeless people. That's great. Thank you, Lauren Boebert.
Buddy. And I'll be honest with you, I had 2 seniors in high school at that time, and they didn't need to go through that publicity. I also was not even elected to that position at that time. So, you know, that was a personal decision. No doubt. I own that. That was a bad mistake. Should not have done it.
Was it a mistake not to tell your colleagues when they were considering you for leader, knowing that you had something so big and embarrassing in your recent past?
Yeah.
Berman, I don't know if you just joined, but we've been watching maybe one of my favorite like primary debates I've ever seen. Maybe the favorite of the primary debates, certainly.
I don't think so. I mean, this happened, you know, at a time that was, you know, this was before even we had theater incidents or anything else that was embarrassing to folks. And so, no, you know, serving in public life is hard work, and exposing your life to it is, you know, a personal decision, and I chose not to.
That was about the softest reference that he could have made, but do you want to talk about the theater thing?
Sure. So, Kyle, I certainly have owned up to my night out in Denver. And, you know, I've gone on that public apology tour, and I'm grateful for the mercy and grace that has been shown. But I'm not going to continue to live life in shame and be beat up by this. And, you know, I would like to go back to my legislative record for just a second.
We're not going to do that. You had plenty of time to answer the question. You chose not to. That's fine. I just want to make sure.
And
you have apologized for the theater incident.
I certainly have.
And I just want to make sure. Did you apologize for the behavior that went on with you and your date, or the vaping, or did you apologize, or pardon me, or did you apologize for lying to voters about what you did that night and the disrespect that you showed to service workers that night? What specifically were you apologizing for?
Were you apologizing for the making out beforehand? Were you apologizing for like the groping outside of the pants? Were you apologizing for the specifically like jerking him off? Like what was the physical contact? Like God, dude.
I don't believe there was disrespect. There were things that were absolutely taken out of context.
There's video of your interactions with service workers. I'm asking,
right,
are you apologizing for the lying to voters,
that I flipped someone off, and I did
yeah.
not. So, I mean, I think it's been very mischaracterized. I'm apologizing for you, Kyle Clark, getting footage and releasing that, and people seeing this in a very private moment.
Certainly. It was very important to figure out whether you were telling the truth,
you just had
or
an
whether a
interview
public
recently
agency...
He was one of the people who actually broke the story? I guess that makes sense because it was Denver News, right? It makes sense that he would... It was a very private moment in a very public place. Shirley, we've all been there, okay?
It was lying about your conduct.
You just had an interview with CityCast Denver, and you were saying how disgusting it is to record someone without their knowledge.
Let's talk about the use of earmarks in Congress.
You did that very same thing and released it to the world.
Members request funding for pet projects. That's what an earmark is, and some Republicans have rejected that process as like wasteful and corrupt and that kind of thing. Colorado's Republican Congressman, former Ken Buck, did not participate in earmarks. Retiring Republican Congressman Doug Lamborn did not use earmarks. Ms. Boebert, when you were elected to Congress, you said that earmarks were wasteful. You said they foster corruption. You said they're a way to buy votes. And then you decided to start using them too. So let me ask all of you, show of hands, please. Will you participate in the earmark process if elected to Congress?
Absolutely.
That is a yes from Mr. Lynch.
It depends on next year's rules.
It is, the earmark process is terrible, but right now it is actually genuinely, literally the only way to get anything done because the system is built around it. So it's not like you can say no and lie, or yes and be honest. What does it mean? Currently the only way to get any bills passed ever in any context ever is basically the first bill, the basic bill, says all in favor of I'm trying to think of something like completely innocuous. I don't know. All in favor of $18 extra being allocated to TSA, and then someone will earmark and go like, okay, $13 billion to Israel. I want also, if you vote for this bill, $13 billion to Israel. And someone else will be like, okay, I think we should get a raise too. We should attach a raise that we all get to this. And then it gets cycled around 15 different revisions of the same, and then it goes to the House and the Senate, the House and the Senate, and everyone and eventually they all agree on a version of the bill that they dislike the least. They usually do it with budget bills because they want to attach this stuff to stuff that people kind of need. Like if you have the very basic budget bill that everyone agrees is necessary to keep the country functioning, you can attach whatever you want to it. It's just, it's a completely dysfunctional process.
Allow me to say these people's names, okay? Mr. Lynch, Mr. Holtorf, Mr. Sonnenberg. A no on earmarks from Mr. Yu.
It depends.
It depends from Ms. Flora. Okay. So I want to ask a follow-up question on the issue of earmarks, Ms. Boebert. You've repeatedly taken credit for projects in Colorado that you asked for funding for, but then you voted against the bill in the end. Bridge over the Roaring Fork River in Glenwood Springs, water treatment plant in Gunnison, I-70 interchange in Grand Junction. You're able to vote no and get the praise for voting no, because you know that there are enough other Republicans who are willing to vote for those bills so they'll pass. My question for you is this, and just a short answer, it truly is a yes or no question. If you were the deciding vote, would you still have voted no and killed all of those projects in Colorado that you now take credit for?
Yes, and I would have worked for a process. I would have worked for a process to get those over the line, but I worked to get those in, and I have had over 80 initiatives signed into law through the appropriations process.
I appreciate the direct answer. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mr. Sonnenberg, we are moving to you now. You led an effort in the state legislature to reclassify a hospital provider fee so the government could keep that money without voter approval, sidestepping the taxpayer Bill of Rights. The free market think tank, the Independence Institute, called it a massive
he's on his hater game. He's having fun.
You their 2017 Californian of the Year for, quote, destroying Tabor and denying Coloradans a vote on taxes. The question is, do you regret doing that? And can conservatives trust you to hold the line on taxes given your record?
Thank you for the question, Marshall, and absolutely I would do it again. If you know, 2009, they put the hospital provider fee in place. That's used to leverage money from the federal government to take care of those people that they have to take care of, that hospitals are required to take care of. In 2017, the Colorado Joint Budget Committee in the legislature decided to balance the budget on the backs of those hospitals and take that money away, so hospitals could not have the money they were required to have from the federal government to be able to service those people. So all I did is moved it from one side to another to a separate fund so they could no longer balance the budget on the backs of those hospitals, those private hospitals, those rural hospitals. It's one thing if you're in Douglas County and you drive 5 minutes to a hospital or 7 minutes to a hospital. It's another thing if you live in Carville and you close the hospital at Hugo and you're an hour and a half away when you have chest pains.
Why would the reps agree to this debate when the mods are so harsh on them? Because on this level, it's necessary. It's actually a contested race. And what else are they going to do, right? The problem that they're facing here is that any kind of broadly publicized debate is going to need to be like repped by a fairly large news station, and that's probably going to be the one out of Denver, and that means the people working there are going to hate them. The only difference is that these guys are actually doing their job properly, unlike the vast majority of local and national news networks who are so committed to flaccid, impotent, sterile civility politics that they will let anything run by. These guys are treating the candidates with exactly the level of contempt that they deserve and no more, which is infinite contempt.
Thank you, Mr. Sonnenberg.
Mr. Holtorf, there are occasions that it seems like you almost take pride in being offensive to people. You told a State House colleague who had lost his son in the Aurora Theater shooting that he needed to let go of his son's murder. You called a legislator of color buckwheat during a floor debate. You suggested that people with disabilities are like people who took the risk of running with the bulls in Pamplona. And you suggested that Ms. Boebert dresses like a prostitute. Do you regret saying any of those things? And why do you talk to people like that?
Cal, thank you for the question. Most people know that I'm a straight, no-nonsense conservative. And I say things that oftentimes are misinterpreted or misunderstood. But with respect to one incident, Representative Ortiz, who I was talking to, Eastern Texas country boy, Eastern Colorado country boy, we're friends. We serve as co-chairs in the State House on the Veterans Caucus, brothers in arms. So he was not offended by that comment. Okay, he actually understood me when we had that. But I don't want to talk about that. Let me tell you what I want to talk about.
Well, actually, no, this isn't free swim. I ask a question, you answer.
Please allow me to finish.
Let me just ask you. The question was, do you regret saying any of those things? And why do you speak to people that way? Do you regret saying that Ms. Boebert, a sitting congresswoman, dresses like a prostitute?
So allow me to explain. I have 5 daughters. Okay, I raised 5 daughters. And I'll tell you.
Is there a non-sexist way for me to say that Boebert does look like a cheap whore? Is there like a woke way to thread that needle? Does anyone know of any like euphemisms or synonyms? Because it's true and everyone agrees, but it's kind of sexist. And I just want to, is there a way to, no, but you're right. Can we just, okay, I'm sorry I said, it's all good. It's all good.
You know what? Women, in my humble opinion, particularly if they're a congresswoman, need to dress respectfully and professionally. Okay, there's times when
you can say she looks cheap. Yeah, but I don't want to make it a class thing. For me, it's just like, I just think it's funny that you're juxtaposing like a Christian nationalist trad like attitude towards gender politics. Meanwhile, she has, I don't know, like Jersey Shore done up fake tan and eyebrows. Her hair looks like a shitty wig. She's giving handies to people in theater. It's just like, it's just go on J Shore, you know? Go have a good, you shouldn't be in Congress. You should be out there spending 60% of your meager paycheck on fake nails, and I support your right to do that. You know, you're the one trying to take that right away from other people.
We've been on the campaign trail.
Thank you. That's time. Ms. Boebert, would you like to quickly respond to Mr. Holtorf's dress code for women?
I don't think that I have a comment on his dress code. I'm happy for with my clothing options, and I don't dress for half the tour for the whole tour.
Especially at the theater, right? You're really happy with those options, aren't you, ma'am?
Mr.
Those
Holtorf,
were awesome.
Thank you. Mr. Holtorf, thank you.
Mr. Holder, thank you. We will actually be the ones making fun of Lauren Boebert for being a public whore. Thank you.
Are split on whether our elections are rigged. I'm going to ask for a show of hands on a question asked of Republicans in a recent CU YouGov survey. Please raise your hand if you believe that elections across the country will be conducted fairly and accurately.
I'm sorry, did you say across the country?
Across the country.
Okay, thank you.
Not one hand is raised.
Wait, I'm sorry,
what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Raise your hand if you think elections across the country will be conducted fairly and accurately.
I think most of them will be.
So we see a hand from Mr. Sonnenberg, a hand from Ms. Flora, Mr. Yu, and a late hand from Mr. Lynch. Just for some perspective, when that
this is a meaningful distinction, I feel. You know, the difference between a Republican who's on the full-on, like, everything is being taken from us, everything is being stolen, trust nothing, and people who are at least a little bit in reality.
That same question was asked. 41% of Colorado Republicans surveyed agreed that elections across the country will be fair and accurate, where 44% disagreed.
Were they fair and accurate in 2020?
Well, we're about to talk about
Pennsylvania?
2020.
What
Mr.
about
Holtorf,
Michigan?
if you would
What
stop
about
speaking, I can
Wisconsin?
get
What
a
about
question
Arizona?
now. All right, thank you.
Let's talk about that.
On January 6, 2021, after the pro-Trump mob that stormed the Capitol was cleared out, Congress reconvened to certify the election results. And Ms. Boebert was one of 147 Republicans who voted to overturn the election results. So I'm going to ask you each...
Never forget that, by the way. Never forget that. Never forget the fact that a majority of the sitting Republicans in Congress tried to go through the legal procedure after Jan 6 happened, after they tried the insurrectionary attack. They tried to, through legal means, overturn the certified votes.
Knowing what you know now, would you vote the same way that Ms. Boebert voted then to overturn the 2020 election results? And I'm going to start with Ms. Boebert. Knowing what you know now versus what you know then, would you change that vote or would you vote the same way? Please just a yes or no so we can get to everybody. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lynch, would you vote the same way? You would not have voted to overturn the 2020 election. Mr. Holtorf?
No.
Mr. Sonnenberg?
No, I would not have voted to overturn the election.
Ms. Flora?
I would not have voted to overturn.
Mr. Yu?
No.
All right, so just for the record, Ms. Boebert voted to overturn the 2020 election.
Objected
She's the
to
only
the
one
Electoral
there.
College certification.
The only one up here who said that she would also make that same vote today. Let's do some more candidate questions, please.
Mr. Lynch, it is your turn to ask another candidate a question.
Well, Richard took all my thunder, but...
Let me step back. Go ahead.
So... I don't care what you say. All of this is public, Congresswoman. 0 bills passed, 24 votes missed, fewer comments, and I appreciate the fact that you have taken over my campaign slogan of delivering for Colorado. But can you tell me how you actually have delivered anything?
Yes.
For the state of Colorado.
Thank you.
That has been signed in and is actually actionable from what you've done.
I understand that Democrat congressional campaigner Adam Frisch, you know, you have his old campaign manager, and these are her talking points. I get that, but we're not at zero. We are not at zero for legislation passed. I have passed my.
Let's let her answer the
I have passed my Pueblo Jobs Act that's been signed into law, but I've also passed over 80 other initiatives that have been signed into law. One single standalone bill is not the only way to get something signed into law. And I have over 80 initiatives that have been signed into law, whether that be through the amendment process, the appropriations process, or through the congressionally directed spending. And I have brought back almost $100 million in infrastructure and water projects to Colorado. Water storage in Rangeley, Colorado, $5 million.
I mean, I could, if I cared enough to, we could probably look over this and find that she's either lying or exaggerating in a lot of respects. But we all know she has an abysmal congressional record. I don't feel like I need to go out of my way to fact check that and interrupt the pace of what is otherwise an incredibly, phenomenally entertaining debate.
There. I have advocated for the South Bridge in Glenwood Springs, Colorado for 3.5 years, and they were able to get a huge chunk of money, and the former mayor came to my office to thank me for my work in ensuring that that was done, and also the congressionally directed spending that went prior to that.
We got another minute of something you wanted to answer, and Mr. Lynch gave you the opportunity to do that. Mr. Yu, your question for another candidate.
So I believe in taking a high road like Mr. Sonnenberg does as well, but I feel like I need to justify one of my previous answers. And this is regarding, I'm knocking about 500 doors a day. I've spoke to almost 40,000 people.
Is this a question
So
to
the one
somebody?
question I have is for Lauren Boebert. I'm surprised because 90% of the people out there don't know any of the candidates, and that includes Lauren, which is a surprise, which I guess not because she's not really part of this district or have a connection. But what worries me is because I said earlier I do feel the seat's in jeopardy. The reason why is because unaffiliates and even moderate-leaning constituents do not know you, don't like you, And are you ever going to make an attempt to talk to anyone outside the Republican Party?
Don't know me or don't approve of me, because those are two very different things that you're saying.
Okay, so basically it's actually it's one and the same, because they don't know you, and the ones that do know you.
It sounded like the question was, are you going to talk to anybody outside the Republican Party?
Absolutely, and I do on a regular basis. I enjoy meeting with people. I have lived a life of service, from McDonald's to serving people through my church in the local jail, these at-risk women, and also in my restaurant. I love engaging with people. That is my favorite thing in life, and so I absolutely do connect and bridge.
That's what she's got. At my restaurant, I like talking to people. That's years and years as a federal government servant. Again, like, you know, why bother fact checking?
The unaffiliated and the Republican voters. That is why I've been able to successfully get bipartisan legislation passed through the House without compromising my principles, working with Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper even to have co-sponsoring legislation in the Senate for my initiatives. And my legislation comes from conversations with people in the district, meeting with county commissioners, even in blue counties or blue cities, meeting with their council members. And that is where my legislative ideas come from. And I put pen to paper and get them passed.
Thank you, Ms. Bober. You get to keep talking because you get the last question to another candidate.
Sure. Peter, you and I are the only two here on this stage who have won a congressional primary. And, you know, one thing that I really love and respect about you is the work that you were putting to talk to people that usually don't show up to a Republican event. I have lots of ideas on how to get more people to events, but you are doing a great job of going door to door and meeting with people one-on-one and talking about the issues. And so
this is actually a meaningful distinction. I've talked about this before when talking about progressive victory. It's that Republicans have a terrible ground game. The people who show up for Republican events, who donate, all of that, are almost always like the same people. It's very rare for them to get new people energized into it, you know? Not to say that the Republican Party never gets new members. They do, but they don't have a very active community around it. So
Peter, my question to you would be, how do you intend to take all of that wonderful work that you're doing and communicating with unaffiliated voters and even Democrats and make promises that you would still not compromise any of our Republican Party principles?
That's a great question. And the one thing I've always made clear is that I'm a conservative. Everyone always asks me at the door, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? And I'm proud to be able to say I'm a strong conservative Republican. But I also want them to understand that it's amazing when you have conversation. We all want the same thing, regardless if you're Republican or Democrat. We all want to make sure we have a good job, be able to put a roof over our head, be able to put food on the table, be able to take care of our friends and family. We all want the same thing. It's just a different ideology on how we accomplish those things. And it's amazing when you spend half an hour to an hour talking to a Democrat who is screaming at you in their driveway, how you actually mend those fences, and you're actually able to come to a conclusion that, guess what, we actually do want the same thing. And I don't have to compromise because, guess what, we all want the same thing. It's just an ideology of teaching people.
See, this doesn't exist anymore. He's not going to win, of course, but like this doesn't exist anymore as a viable option in the Republican Party. It simply does not exist anymore. How can you possibly do any of this and then go on to be the kind of Republican that can work with the GOP on a national level? It's dead rhetoric. You know, this is the Republican equivalent of when Democrats talk about how, like, bipartisanship, we can work together on this, you know, no matter our disagreements, we can agree on these fundamentals. And like, no, they can't. You know, it's dead rhetoric. It doesn't apply anymore.
People exactly how things do work. And that's what's great about this. I have been told 1,000 times, Peter, I had no idea. How come members never told me about that? Making sure people just learn a little bit really does build a lot of fences.
In the last 2 seconds, Peter, are we in an ice age currently?
We are.
Thank you all.
We are. Are we not in an interglacial ice age right now? Yes.
I did not expect us to end there, but it's time for closing statements. You will each have 1 minute. The order.
So he's a climate change denier, I guess? Okay.
Was randomly generated, shared with the candidates in advance. Mr. Sonnenberg, you will go first.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you for the opportunity to be here as part of this debate. My name is Jerry Sonnenberg, and I'm a fourth-generation farmer and rancher from Sterling, Colorado, on the farm that's been in our family for over 100 years.
I really do like the fact that I brought up, hey, one of the groups that's going to like really oppose the crackdown on undocumented immigrants are farm owners who want to take advantage of the cheap labor. And then 8 picoseconds later, this guy was like, well, hold on now.
I live in the same house that both my father and I were raised in. I've raised my family there. I have deep roots in the community. I served in the legislature where I worked across the aisle and served as President Pro Tem in the Colorado Senate, where I solved problems. I was vice chair of the State Affairs Committee, where we worked to kill the liberal agenda the last time Republicans were in charge. I was chair of the Ag Committee, where we worked on issues to help oil and gas, on water issues, on natural resources, all of those things that are important to agriculture as well. I'm proud of my record as a legislator. You'll be proud of me as your congressman. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to sonnenbergforcongress.com. I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Sonnenberg, thank you very much. Mr. Yu.
Well, Colorado, we have a large primary field, as you can see, and that's okay, because in America, you have the right to run for office. And I'm honored to be on this primary ballot because you, the constituents, put me there. I did not buy my way on this ballot. And so the most likely is whoever wins this primary election will be your next representative. So I encourage everyone to make sure you vote in this primary election to make sure you have the right representative for you. And when you do vote, make sure you have a candidate who represents all 750,000 constituents, not just a small fraction. So I say to the Republicans, I am a solid conservative who follows the Constitution. I say to the unaffiliates, we are on the same page. And to the Democrats, you are always welcome to the table to make sure we find commonality. We need to remember that at the end of the day, we need to put away our disagreements to make sure we remember that we are friends, we are families, and we are neighbors, and that we are all Americans. My name is Peter Yu. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you very much.
Mr. Yu, thank you. I appreciate all of you respecting your opponents by staying to time. The next closing statement belongs to Ms. Flora.
I grew up on Lowry Air Force Base, and I have deep roots fighting alongside my neighbors in CD4 as a parent and school choice advocate, as a director of public policy and a radio host. I have stood from the school board to the State House, and now I'm ready to stand for you in Congress. Voters face a clear choice. We've seen how my opponent, Lauren Boebert, would represent us. She's abandoned her neighbors in CD3. She has missed key votes while chasing cameras. She has also been in the center of D.C. drama instead of doing the real work of the people. You know, it is time for you to decide. You can either see more of the same dysfunction and the same division, or it is time for new leadership, someone focused on real solutions to secure our border and revitalize our economy. You get to decide that, and I'm asking for your vote. You see, I'm not running from a seat. I'm running for this seat, to serve you and to fight for the future of our children and our grandchildren. That's why I'm asking for your vote. Thank you, and God bless you.
Ms. Flora, thank you. Mr. Lynch.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kyle and Marshall. We've had a checkered past, but I appreciate what you did tonight, which was ask questions about policy. And unfortunately, didn't get a lot of answers about that. I'm Mike Lynch. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a veteran. I'm a small business owner. And I've actually done this work. I've passed and got signed 50 bills in the State House. I know how this process works. I know it's not about the vitriol. I know it's not about trying to get on TV. I know it's not about being a community organizer or being somebody that desires to just be on the next tweet. I realize this is hard work. This is a sacrifice. This is a sacrifice of leaving your community to go serve in D.C. I'm not excited about that, but I've done it for the last 4 years. I've risen to the highest ranks you can here in the state. I would appreciate your vote. It's not time to send somebody who has never been elected to Congress and those who haven't passed bills. Mike Lynch, lynch4colorado.com. Thank you.
Mr. Lynch, thank you very much. We have just 2 more closing statements to go. Mr. Holtorf.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce myself to all of Colorado.
And slapped his mic.
Most people don't know that I'm a retired Army colonel. I served 29 years. I have more geopolitical experience than anybody in front of you right now, having served 5 overseas tours, 2 combat tours, and yes, I'm a battle-hardened, tough combat veteran. Combat arms, Army aviator. If you don't know what that is, you need to look that up. I'm also a 3rd-generation cattle rancher, running a business for 17 years successfully. I'm also a businessman. I'm also the House Republican whip. 5 years I've served, and I've passed 38 bills signed by the governor, not just out of the House, like some people have purported, that haven't gotten much done in Congress. I produce and I get things done. I want to talk about one of the candidates here is from Douglas County. She lived in California for many years and then came back to Colorado. She has no experience in the military other than being a DOD dependent. That isn't service. I also want to talk about how she's never held an office to include school board. She ran for the U.S. Senate, failed, and now she wants to run for U.S. Congress.
That's your time.
So thank you. I'm Richard Holtorf, Holtorf4Colorado.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holtorf. Ms. Boebert.
Colorado, this is choose your fighter time. I have a proven track record of delivering for you, having over 80 initiatives signed into law, bringing your tax dollars back to Colorado. And right now, you see what is at stake. You see the political persecution that is going on with President Trump, the election interference that is taking place with his guilty verdict just announced.
There it is immediately. Every other candidate here is in their own way trying to be someone who isn't what Lauren Boebert is, which is a cultist for Trump. That's what her job is. The hardcore MAGA group, her MTG, whatever, like they just exist as a part of that envoy, right? She's given a chance to talk about herself. Instantly, she just talks about Trump because that's what that's what she represents, service to Trump.
Today, and right now we have got to unify the Republican Party. I understand that my opponents see me as their only opponent and will attack me. I will debate policy all day long, but we have more important things to focus on. Our farmers and our ranchers need us to get legislative work done. We need to get the wolves delisted federally. I have passed that out of the House, and we need to get that all the way through. We need to lower inflation. We need to bring back our energy jobs. We need to secure the southern border. I am your fighter to do all of that. I have earned top line on the ballot because I have been earning the votes of constituents in the 4th District, and I hope to earn yours tonight. God bless.
Ms. Boebert, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our candidates for continuing the Colorado tradition where candidates show up to debate, don't duck challenging questions, and engage with each other about their differences. Thank you also to our small but mighty audience and a cramped studio tonight. A special thank you to the outgoing news director here at 9 News, Tim Ryan, who has spent 30 years in our newsroom. He has led our political coverage for well more than a decade, organizing countless debates and relentlessly advocating for the voters' right to know where candidates stand on the issue.
Don't know who this guy is, but if they like him, I like him. Let's go.
Ballots for this race and the others hit the mail on June 3rd. Final day to vote in person in the primary is June 25th. If you missed any of this debate or would like to share it with others, it will be on demand on 9 News Plus.
Yep, I would like to share with others. Thank you. That has been the entire point of this exercise. Wow. Jesus, huh? That was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a debate go down like that. I don't think I've ever seen it go down like that. That was something. That was phenomenal. Who was it who suggested I watch that? I knew about the debate. I had heard it was interesting. No description did it justice. That was crazy. My God. The glasses tie clip was a good omen. It was a sign of confidence. Exactly. Yeah, I didn't know moderators could be competent. It's crazy.